Maybe we could talk about adolescents and teenagers specifically. Teenage years are wild. I always say that the single most traumatic aging event and the most rapid rate of aging that we ever experience is puberty. I mean, just fundamentally, brain circuits that were for one thing or that were dormant change and come alive in ways that the world forever will look different to us, feel different to us, and our self-perception changes, period. It's something that biologists still understand at the level of hormones and hypothalamic circuitry, but that has really not been matched to a psychological understanding and vice versa. So like nothing is quite like the music you listen to when you're a teenager. It brings you back. The memories you form, positive and negative, stamped down, boom, now and forever. The emotional salience can change, but those are wild years. What are some of the more critical needs of late adolescents and teens that, are actionable? My teen years were crazy, but even if they're less crazy, they're always crazy.
Yes. So, and one of the reasons I think, at least in America, that adolescence is seen as such a huge shift, like my kid is out of control, they're always out, they're like always rejecting me, I actually don't think is unrelated to the behavioral control approaches that are inherent in American parenting. Because like you referred to, your kid becomes 14 and they kind of realize like, wait, I'm bigger than one of my parents. Like, I literally don't care about their sticker charts anymore. And we might have missed 14 years of building a relationship. And so what that kid's adolescence is going to look like is markedly different than if for those past 14 years you weren't giving in to everything. No, but you were leading in a sturdier, more connected way. So I really think this whole idea that American adolescents like reject everything, I actually think not all of it, a part of it is completely developmentally normal, but a big part of it relates to this tradition of behavioral control that kids cannot reject until they're at the age that they kind of could survive on their own, which is adolescence. So I think that's really important. The things I would tell parents to really keep in mind that are critical. Number one is related to that. Like a teen's job is to separate and to start to form their own identity. And I think there's a couple things about that parents need to know. Number one, like I don't think we prepare parents enough for the true sense of loss they feel when their kids are adolescents. Because that's very real. Like you've just spent all these years and like you've driven them to every soccer and they kind of talk to you in the back seat and maybe you have family movie nights and then all of a sudden they don't want any of that. And it's just so important for parents to know, like, I'm going to feel sad. I'm going to feel lost. And if we don't know to expect it, we often kind of infuse that into a lot of anger toward our kid. And so I just think that's normal. And we should talk about that more. And parents of adolescents need to be talking about that with each other. Of course, you miss that. That's totally normal. Number two, related to that separation. If you think about identity formation, like here's a kid and us and we're kind of close and they now are at the stage where developmentally their job at that stage is to figure out who they are. They have to overcorrect. Like you have to kind of overcorrect in the amount of space you take because it's really the only way you can figure out like, wait, maybe I do want to take parts of that. That part's okay. And so I think that's like a powerful image to think about. Like they are moving far away. That distance they take from you is not their final point. They will move closer. Now, going back to loss, not as close as they used to be. And that is different, but this is their way of trying to figure out who they are. Then the last thing I'd say that kind of relates to that image is like, even as they move away, I think parents massively underestimate how much they still need us there making efforts to connect. And I always think like the difference in like an explorer and a nomad is whether or not you have a home base. And like if our teens feel like nomads, is not a good situation. They're explorers. They try a million different things, but like they really do need us. They need to know that they have a home. And I'll never forget in my private practice, I used to work with teens not that long ago, just the teens, sometimes the parents too. And this teen came to me, and this was extreme. She'd been really in a bad place with her parents, like intense conflict. And they got in this huge fight, and she was really, really upset. And she was describing this to me. She's like, and then I was like, get out of my room. Get out. I hate you. Get out. You know, and I was just like sitting there listening. And then she like, I pushed him out and I slammed the door. And then just a couple minutes later, opened the door. My heart's racing. Can you believe they weren't there? Can you believe they weren't there? And to me, it was just this like, and again, it's not about being a punching bag, but I her seeming anger and her like intense pain were so close together in her own story that it's just over and over the same thing. Like, they're gonna reject you. They're gonna say, get out of my room. And yes, it sucks, but they want you to slip a note under their door. After you've taken a couple minutes, it says, that was really tough. Or like, wow, that got out of control. You're a good kid and I love you. And I want to just tell parents of teens, you're gonna do that. There's gonna be a pause, and then you will hear them rip up the note. You will. And like, I swear to any parent that still resonated. And your kid is again trying to figure out, how do I stay close with my parents, and I'm figuring out my own who I am. So like, they rip up the note because like they almost like have to do it to like take in how much they're still desperate for those bids for connection.
Sounds a lot like the dynamics of adult relationships, although hopefully with a little bit less dramatic accentuation.
Yeah.
But you know, even if it does, I mean, it's like these circuits that are laid down in childhood, early childhood, they persist, right? I mean, I think if anything has become clear to me in understanding brain development and brain function, it's that, you know, we don't discard circuitry for attachment and go, oh, you know, that was for mom and this one was for dad and that one was for the dog, and then the romantic relationship is different. We repurpose the circuits. Mm-hmm. Hence all the beautiful work on childhood attachment that's now being translated to adult attachment. I mean, I realize there's nuance to it, but you know, I was reflecting a bit on this, again, incredibly potent phrase or mention of explorers versus nomads, of having a home base, and thinking about these psychology experiments where children are observed in the presence of their caretakers. Sometimes the strange situation task where kids are separated from their moms, and the mom and child, typically mom. Nowadays, it's also been done with other caretakers and dads reunite. But one doesn't even have to know about those experiments. All you have to do is go to a park or be out in public and see a little toddler venturing away from parent. And then what do they do every once in a while? They look back. They're just trying to check to make sure they're there. Even the kids that are like taking off on the tricycle like crazy will eventually stop and look back. It's like this fundamental circuit. We're looking back, you know, and how far they feel they can go is in direct relationship to presumably the number of times that
they recharged,
that they recharged, and were able to see that that verification that the parent was still there. I think this notion of explorers versus nomads, and being an explorer obviously being a good thing, a healthy thing, within reason, and nomads just feeling adrift, untethered.
Yes.
You know, one of the scariest words, at least to me, in the English language. So the note under the door.
Yeah.
It included the words, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too detailed here, but those words sometimes are never spoken in a home, sadly. Sometimes are spoken so often and under so many circumstances that one wonders, like, do they lose their potency? Yeah. But I noticed that in that note, it finished, I love you. It's sort of like stating at the end of the day, no matter what you say, probably even what you do. Yep. I mean, I've been in the presence of parents of kids that were criminals that did horrible things. They still love their kids. So reminding kids that under any and all circumstances.
Yeah, and again, and I think what's so critical, because our brain collapses, is that doesn't mean you think their behavior is okay. And I get the fear. Like, I would never want to send my kid the message that it's okay to, quote, do certain things, right? Like, that it's okay to just scream at your parents. Of course, it's not okay. It's just, I think we miss, like, that happened. Like, that happened already. Like, if I dropped my phone and it broke, and I was trying to understand why it broke, trying to understand that doesn't mean it's okay that I dropped it. Like it just dropped. Like it already happened. Now what? And yeah, our kids need to know that they're loved. And that, again, there's kind of like in that message, I think, like I still see you're a good kid under that moment. And I actually think it's a powerful strategy for every parent to kind of conjure up a good kid image. Like, what is it? Was that last time we were playing this game and it was just so fun? Or is it a memory of my kid when they were 3? And like, I don't know, they did this really cute thing. And it kind of like really crystallizes that. And like even under, this bad behavior, that kid's still there. And the kids who behave the worst are in the deepest pain. I mean, the adults too. And that's not to say it's okay. But again, we're talking about relationships we want to be in. Like if you're in a relationship with your teen, it's not one you're like, this is toxic. Like this is my kid. I'm going to be in a relationship with them. So, remembering that they're in pain. Teens are in a lot of pain. They're exploring a new world. Frankly, right now, like teens have worlds, we don't understand it. That's so helpful for parents to approach your teen just as a tangible tool and say, there's so many things in your world that I don't understand. And frankly, probably I might like criticize or judge. Like, can you take out your phone? This, whatever it is, this app you're on, this video game, like, can we just even time box this 5 minutes? Like, I just want to end this conversation saying I understand it better. Like, I promise you that's probably going to do more for your relationship with your kid than anything else. Because yes, they do, and they might reject you. And if you do, again, don't take the bait, but ask again next week. Like, again, they need us to return.
Yeah, one thing's for sure, none of us, except those that are teens, know what it's like to be a teenager in 2024. Just like they didn't know what it was like to be a teenager for me in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
How could they?
Right.
So what are your thoughts on like family meetings? Like once a week we sit down, we check in. I hear that people do this, may participate in these before. Do you feel like those can be useful, or is it more window dressing?
I mean, I guess it depends what's happening in there. I mean, the idea of like, hey, there's a lot going on in our life and we have a ritual of coming together and talking things through, working through problems. Like if that's what it is, that's a beautiful thing. Like I hear that, my first thought is I should do that, But you're right, like life gets messy. So, but if it's done in a way where it feels we end and everyone feels a little bit more understood and a little bit more purpose and, making things move forward in a positive direction, that's amazing. I think family meetings, it's funny, the way I think about them often, which is just different, is it's actually a great strategy, especially when your kids are older and there's like somewhat of an ongoing conflict. So maybe there's like an ongoing conflict about how much video game time or, how much, how late they can stay out. And to say to a kid, and again, this just comes from, again, so important for teens, we have to approach our kid like we're on the same team. I always say it's me and my kid against a problem, not me against my kid where they are the problem. Like, and so to say, hey, you've been late, or we have to figure out your curfew. And like, look, you're a smart kid. You're a good kid. My number one job is to keep you safe. But you're old now. And if I just tell you a time, it's the same thing that happened last year. We're going to get in fights all year. Why don't we sit down and we'll do what I do in my office. There's 2 people. They each have ideas. I'm going to bring a pad of paper, and that's actually super important. And I'm going to write down all of your ideas and my ideas. And then we're just going to kind of go through and cross out the ones that, feel completely unreasonable. And I have a feeling when we do that, we're going to come to a good place. So again, you can see there's that like hope I'm giving. Like I hold the positive outcome, same team. I'm giving my kid credit in advance. It's actually like really, it's usually the opposite of what teens feel, which is just my parents don't even listen to me or care and think they have all the answers.
I've heard this notion of, couple parents come first and kids come second. And some people are probably like, what? Well, clearly never parented. Well, no, actually, it's an interesting idea, perhaps not correct or incorrect, but maybe dynamic across time, where the real question is, if kids know that they are running the family in terms of what they do or their inability to not be attended to, et cetera, is driving the whole relationship that the parents are in.
Yeah.
Versus, recognizing, and here I'm imagining 2-parent home, but we could talk about divorced or people with significant others or single parent homes. I've been in all of those. You got to wonder, like, are kids really paying attention to how much they are being prioritized to the point where if they observe their parents tending to their own needs that they feel deprivation, or does it make them feel safer? Like, hey, mom and or dad are taking care of themselves and can show up better.
Yes, I think that is critically important. And it kind of goes again to boundaries, like of a parent. Like my relationship with my kid is so important. And I'm not going to let that take over me. Like that is not all of me. I am not only a caregiver to my kid. Like I would stand by that all day long. Like, is that an important part of me? And it's still a part of me. And I think this is really important to own as a parent. Because again, we tend to get apologists for it, or we look for our kids' permission. We'll say, look, I need to go out with dad without you, okay? Like we have a relationship too. Like, and again, there's that job confusion, and my kid feels that. And again, it's that kind of giving them too much power. I've said this to my kids a lot. So they'll say, why do you go out with dad without me? I'll say, it's a great question. First of all, dad and I were married before we had kids. Our relationship is really important to us. And we love being with you. And being with you is different than just being the two of us. And that really, really matters to us. And so you don't have to be happy about it. And let's say I have a babysitter I know they're safe with. You can cry when I leave, and the babysitter will hold you, and we're going to go out to dinner, and we're going to come back, and, we'll see you in the morning. Yeah, I think that is so important. I actually think this is another topic. Like, this topic of, like, rage in parenthood is, like, a big topic. Like, the way... Why do I get to these moments of rage so often? That my screaming is not just screaming at my kids, it's really rageful. And I think the parents often who are the most vulnerable to that are the ones where they're not meeting like any of their non-caregiving needs, which makes sense that a part of them is like screaming out. Like, what about me? I used to go to dance class. I used to see friends. I used to go out with my partner and talk about things other than, our kids. And so again, I think kids need a sturdy leader, right? More than anything else. And sturdiness is not allowing yourself to be taken over by any one thing, including your relationship with your kid.
Is it truly better for there to be two sturdy leaders than one sturdy leader? I realize this is a controversial question.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's research to back this up, that like having one kind of sturdy leader in your life is massively protective. I really believe that. And so when parents will say, my partner isn't, I'm like, we have research, this is true. Is two better than one? I don't know the research, like probably, I don't know, But what I think is important in there too is what's not great for kids is having like all the caregivers be some like perfectly attuned caregiver, right? Like that actually does not set up your kid for life at all, right? Because I don't know anyone who thinks the partner I'm going to be with one day is going to be perfectly attuned to all my needs. Let me go find that person. So, you have one sturdy leader, you have two, but like being sturdy, part of that is you're gonna rupture. You're gonna mess up, you're gonna hopefully repair, after. But sturdiness, I just wanna make clear, is so not the same as like perfection. Perfection is creepy, it's not a thing. No one needs that.
I love that. It's the first time I've laughed out loud on this podcast about a statement like that. The notion of perfection is kind of creepy. But sturdiness is anything but creepy. It's just such a beautiful word for all the right reasons. What about behavioral examples in parents? So for instance, if children observe parents being affectionate to one another in appropriate ways, right? Attending to one another in boundaried but empathically attuned ways. Do you think that projects forward into their notion of what adult relationships are like and should be like? Conversely, if parents are yelling at one another, do you think that projects forward into it's okay to yell in adult relationships?
Yeah, I think kids they're expert noticers. They notice everything, right? It's part of how they've learned to survive as such helpless, humans. So they definitely notice. They definitely act like sponges. So yes, if you're, kind of privileged enough in that way to grow up in a home where you have parents who, in general, are fairly affectionate, they take responsibility for their stuff, they communicate in a healthy way, I think that is like a true privilege you go into adulthood with. Yes. The other extreme, right? You grow up with parents who, they yell, or they can even yell in scary voices. Again, what I think is really important is the witnessing of that isn't going to be as impactful to a kid as the witnessing of it and nobody naming it and talking to them about it. So this is why so often like kids will be in difficult stages, intense tantrums, major issues at school. And someone's like, what do I do? Like, what do I do with this? Well, like, I gave you all the strategies in the world, but if that is just your kid's way of kind of manifesting all of their struggles with this like huge marital conflict that's happening, it's not going to work. So it's all part of the same system. And so saying to your kid after you fight with your partner, hey, I think you heard Daddy and I screaming. And I'm sure that felt scary, because it does feel scary because they know you're their base. So if their base is of a house, it's like, you know, feels like an earthquake. It feels scary. Like, and, you know, another line I like is like, you were right to notice that. We were using loud voices. Again, I think that's massively confidence, you know, building. Maybe what was that like for you? Or if you have a little kid, just that's enough. You know, and they might look at you and say like, can I have my snack now? But it's still really sunk in. So if there is a lot of conflict, again, I think it's really important we talk